Okay. Nothing scares people more than perhaps this one word, eugenics. Now, from a lot of the things that are on YouTube, who was it who invented this idea? You might easily get the idea that this was something invented by Margaret Sanger. It wasn't. The person who came up with the idea of applying the same principles of breeding for positive characteristics to human beings that we commonly use for breeding positive characteristics in plants and animals was Sir Francis Galton. But Sir Francis Galton did not found a group that later became Planned Parenthood. So there's no political motivation to slam on Sir Francis Galton. There's no political motivation to try to link Sir Francis Galton with the Nazis. There is a political motivation to try to link Margaret Sanger with the Nazis and to say that they enacted her policies, even though they burned and banned her books, even though they shut down her family planning clinics. Okay. Now, eugenics is basically, the idea he came up with was what I said, that, on human beings, you would try to breed for positive characteristics, similarly to what you do with plants and with animals. Of course, human beings aren't plants and animals. Human beings have rights that have to be respected, which is why the whole eugenics thing tends to fall apart, and also why the very word eugenics tends to get people upset because of what the Nazis did in fact do with it. They had the idea of people with characteristics that they didn't like had to be either forcibly sterilized or outright murdered. Okay. And of course they also, and you won't find this emphasized in the anti-Margaret Sanger diatribes. They also did give special awards to German women who had 4 or more children because they wanted to encourage large families among ethnically German women. No, this is not something that the people who attack Margaret Sanger and link her with Nazis are apt to mention, but they did do the positive eugenics as well as the negative eugenics. Now, the problem with eugenics is that humans are a special species. Now, the fact is that a certain amount of eugenics probably is going on today anyway. I've said that I don't think they should be aborting fetuses with Down syndrome, but that probably is eugenics. It's probably a form of eugenics also to screen people for certain types of genetic diseases that could be passed on. Like if you have a couple that both have recessive characteristics that could be passed on, like for cystic fibrosis, that could lead to, children dying young. That screening process could be considered eugenics, but it's actually a positive thing because it, gives them the ability to decide not to make a baby that might die young. And, which again is a different thing than aborting. A very different thing than aborting. You know, I think that you have to separate out the idea of, you know, refraining from creating a pregnancy is a very different thing from terminating a pregnancy once it's started. I also do think that there's also a certain amount of eugenics in the fact that, you know, fertile heterosexual couples of similar characteristics tend to marry each other. Athletes tend to marry athletes. People into music tend to marry people into music. And to some